Hello everybody and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video we're going to be talking about Python loops. Loops are a really powerful way in order to automate and do things across multiple values or multiple data sets. So this is a really exciting video to get your teeth into. Let's jump into it. Okay, so just like before, come in here, new file, Python file. This is kind of another follow-on video in the tutorial series. So if you've not seen any of them before, go back and take a look at them. We're going to be talking about loops. There's a couple of different types of loops in Python. So first off, we are going to do the most common loop, which is the for loop. So let's say I have a list of numbers. We've not actually learned what a list is yet, so don't be too worried about this, but I just want you to copy the exact syntax of what I've got here. So you say a variable is equal to, and then it's square brackets, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hopefully that should make sense. And this is our list of numbers. A loop in Python is a way to just kind of, as it sounds, loop over something or iterate through something. And the way to write that in Python is you're going to say for something in a variable to do that. These are some keywords in Python that are used. So I'm going to say for number in numbers, which is our numbers away. I'm going to print the number. So what I'm saying is here is for each number, this is a variable I'm creating inside this loop. For each number in numbers, which is a variable that I've declared outside of the loop, print the number. And if I run this, you can see this is going to print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is called a for loop because it's saying for each number in numbers, print the number. That's why it's called a for loop. And we're just iterating over it. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I was to add another 6 into this loop and run this again, you can see here I've now got 6 values down below. So you can see how powerful that is already. I've changed one thing here. I've added an extra item and it's looped through that and done something based on that. So imagine you had a list of kind of invoices or something in a list and you want to process them. You know, you just add the invoice into here and bosh, you run your Python code and it's all done. So really powerful feature in Python. There is another type of loop in Python called a while loop, which is quite interesting. It's slightly different from a for loop. A while loop, you kind of don't necessarily know when you want to stop. You kind of have a condition based on when you want to stop. So here you know that you've got a fixed amount of numbers that you're going over. Whereas in a while loop, you're saying loop around this while kind of something is still active. So let's say I've got a count of 5 here and I'm going to say while the count is, actually no, my count is 0. I'm going to say while the count is less than 6, I want you to print count, and I also want you to set the value of count to be equal to count plus 1. We can actually write this as count plus equals 1. It's a little bit of kind of Python syntactic sugar, but for this tutorial series, these two things do exactly the same thing. This is just a little bit quicker and shorter to write. So essentially what's happening here is I've declared a variable called count, which is 0, and I'm saying now I want you to execute this code inside this code block while count is less than 6. So obviously 0 is less than 6, so it's going to print 0, and then it's going to say count plus 1, and that's going to set count to be the value of 1, and then 1 is less than 6, so we're going to print 1, and then it's going to set the value to 2, and then we're going to go all the way up until the value is 6, and then it's going to stop. So I'm expecting 0 to 5 basically to be printed here. I'm just going to comment that out for the minute so we don't confuse ourselves. And you can see what's happened there. We have this while loop and we've got the value of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's think about this. When we get to 5, we print the value 5, then 5 is equal to 5 plus 1, which is 6. 6 is now not less than 6. We kind of leave this while loop and we don't continue anymore. So that's another type of loop in Python. You've got your for loop here and you've got your while loop here. So these are kind of two different types. I'm just going to comment this out whilst we move on as well. There's a few conditions you can do in your loops. So for example, I'm going to say number in number. If the number is greater than 2, I want you to break out of this loop. So we have a keyword in Python called break, which will basically jump out of this code block and stop executing. So we're going to go through all the numbers. We're going to check each number. If the number is greater than 2, I want you to break. Otherwise, you know, you're going to print the number here. So if I run this now, what gets printed to the console is 1, 2. So if we know that numbers is 1 through to 6. So as we loop through numbers, we go through 1. 1 is not greater than 2, so we don't hit this code block. 2 is not greater than 2, so we don't hit this code block. 3 is greater than 2, so we do hit this code block. And what happens is we break out of this code and we stop executing. So we don't continue the loop anymore, we just stop executing. So that is the break keyword, and it can be useful for doing some things like that when you want to break out the loop when you hit essentially a condition. The next one is continue. So we're going to do the same for number in numbers. If the number is, I'm going to say equal to 3, I want you to continue. Otherwise, I'm going to print the number. So what do you think is going to happen here this time? So if you run this here, you can see what's happening here is then for number in numbers, if the number is equal to 3, continue, which basically means jump to the next iteration of the loop. So you can see what's happened here. We've got 1, 2, don't have a 3 because we've never hit this close block. We don't actually go any further than this. We go to the next iteration, which will be 4, which we print out 5 and 6. There's a very subtle difference between continue and break. When we hit the break keyword, we completely exit out of the entire loop and we don't continue, whereas with the continue keyword, we don't. So if I come here actually now and go when number equals 2, actually let's set these to the same things. Number equals 3, number equals 2. So when we run this, we're going to go 1, 2, it's going to break and completely leave the execution, then it's going to come onto this section, and when number equals 3, we're going to continue. So we get 1, 2, 3, we don't do anything, we go to the next iteration, and then 4, 5, 6. So break completely breaks out the entire loop and finishes, whereas continue just skips to the next iteration. Let's say we have now a list of names. I'm going to say Bob, Sally, Jane, Fred. So now I'm doing something slightly different. So I'm saying for name in names. So normally you declare a list of something that's multiple things as a plural, and then in your iteration you can say for the non-plural version of it, or name in name, I want to print out the name. But let's say I also, so what's going to happen here is we're going to print out Bob, Sally, Jane, and Fred. But what is, I actually want the, what position of all these names in the list, because maybe I want to swap Bob out for somebody else. So I need to know what position Bob is in the list. You can wrap your names or anything that's iterable in this built-in function in Python. I said this at the start of the kind of video series. Python has a lot of built-in things for you, so it makes it really powerful. You can use a numerator basically, where you enumerate something like a list here, and essentially you'll get 2 things back. You'll get the index where you're at, the index being if you're at this position here, or this position here, or this position here, and the actual item as well. So I'm going to get the I for the index and the actual name itself. So now if I print this out, what I'm going to get here is that Bob is at position index 0, Sally is at position index 1, Jane is at index 2, and Fred is at index 3. You might be thinking, why is Bob at not a 1, Sally at 2, Jane at 3, and Fred at 4? In computer science, we start at the value 0. So Bob is in the 0th index of this here. So if you go to position 0, Bob is there, not position 1. Position 1 would be this position here. So that's just something to keep out of. But you're going to need this in the kind of homework series that we're going to work on. So this is just something to keep in mind. This is a really handy little trick called enumerate, where you can get the actual item that you're enumerating over and the index in the array of the item that you're indexing over. So one last one I want to go through is list comprehensions, which I think are super cool. We've got this array called for number in numbers. So let's say if the number is greater than 3, I want to print the number. No, actually, let's say, okay, I have some result, which is an empty list. If the number is greater than 3, I want you to put the number into this empty list. So essentially here I'm just saying the number is greater than 3, come into this code block and kind of append the number into the results array, and then we'll finish it. Perfectly normal for loop that you could write here. Nothing wrong with that. It's very handy, but you can actually kind of write this in one line using a list comprehension. So in order to do that, we're going to go for number in numbers, and then I'm going to say if the number is greater than 3, what I want you to do is return me the number, and I want you to store that in a variable called result, which is exactly what we're doing here, except here we're doing it in one line. So we're reading this from left to right. We're saying for number in numbers, so for each number in the number, if the number is greater than 3, then I want you to pop it in this array and call this array results. And then if I print results, you can see we get 4, 5, 6, and if I do the same thing here, print result, I get 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6. But the only difference here is this one took me 1 line to write, and this one took me 4 lines to write. So I really want to impress your friends, then I would look at trying to write list comprehensions whenever you can, because they're super good. They're also a lot quicker than writing list comprehension, than writing a normal for loop. They're extremely quicker. So definitely something to take a look at. Okay, so that is everything you need to know about loops in Python. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Loops are such a powerful thing, and once you start getting variables, conditions, and loop, you can basically almost do anything in any programming language. So it is like a super awesome skill to learn. If you have any comments or questions about this video, do leave them in the comments below. I will respond to them. Make sure you like, subscribe to this video. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day.